editor of the Village Voice at the time, who had some schizophrenic problems. But when she was on target, she was laser on target, you know. There was no way of touching her thought process. It was absolutely brilliant. And I think in a way Tom had that same kind of quality, that when he had a clarity of purpose when he was on target that very few other people had, you know. The pot dealers were considered good guys, you know. They weren't considered bad guys, you know. There was that.
They were the tribal leaders. They were the ones that could make stuff happen.
Well, they had the money.
Yeah.
They were the money. I wouldn't call them tribal leaders. I wouldn't go that far.
Right.
But
It's like every commune had a dealer in it.
Yes.
The dealer was the guy who paid the rent on it.
Yes. No, and I think that there was, and while I talked about the J Companions, it was, you know, pot and psychedelics were very much a part of this culture. So there wasn't a judgment, but if you were dealing cocaine, or you were dealing amphetamine, or you were dealing heroin, you were not considered part of the community. You know, you were. So there was a very ethical kind of position, and there was a tithing system, and there was a very romantic notion of growing your own pot and having your own little garden, or your little community patch over here, or somewhere upstate. It was not. It's the myth around pot of dealer. You know, the myth was very romantic and communal and part of the community, and then there was the business side of it, and the business side of it very, very quickly got ugly with turfing out. I mean, for a long time, my understanding, and certainly you and the people that was much more part of their lifestyle, understand there were all these turfing agreements and cooperative. There was a cooperative principle when organized crime wasn't involved in it, you know, and. So Tom, I remember that my thinking, I don't know who this guy is, you know, I also thought he was very smart, and very smart doesn't usually go to, how do I say this without getting in trouble? A lot of people are very smart, smoke a lot of pot, can't concentrate, you know. Abby and Jerry is frauds, you know, and there was a part of them that was not an unfair critique. But it wasn't the only part of them, you know. But I saw them as this male heterosexual sort of turfing, you know. Abby saw tithing as a personal payment to him, you know. And I think Tom really did want to be quietly in charge, you know. Because I never saw him angry, that I remember. He never did it around me. He probably could have been very angry. You also have to understand my mystique at the time was I was hippie, I was political, I was an open gay man. I was, you know, I really tried to organize the community and not make divisions within the community. The fact that back then, Abby and Jerry saw John Sinclair in truth as a rival, you know, with the White Panther Party. They would never say that on the surface. Abby, because of his personality and his mental health issues, and Jerry, because just of his almost complete narcissistic need to be in charge. Now, I say both of those things because they're true, but that doesn't mean they didn't do interesting and sort of culturally vibrant things. But you have to, when you really know the people, they were not that pleasant up close when you disagreed with them, for example. And I think that they saw John as, you know, John was in Detroit, you know, and they wanted to keep him in Detroit. But he was a rival in a sense, and John had more authenticity around culture. He was a poet. He came out of the poet. He had that poetry workshop in Detroit. You know, he did understand jazz. He did understand that whole cultural history, which Emmett, for example, would be much more because of the mime troupe and that kind of idealization of black culture in the 60s, old black culture. So Abby and Jerry didn't really have that. That wasn't in their credential box. So Tom would be, I think Tom and John would bond over some things. I don't think, my recollection of Tom is that he didn't have all that cultural frame of reference either, but he was like a little bit like a sponge because he was silent and he would just absorb, you know, and then decide what he would keep and what he would put out. He didn't like he didn't like the radical politics. But John was such a pothead, not a pothead, he was such an advocate for pot, and then John got busted. I mean, John became Tom's hero in that sense, you know.
Some of that quietness, I think, is just plain old cowboy culture. Out in the West, you're basically told, Native Americans have that too, that thing about they move slower, they talk lower. They don't, you know? Mm-hmm. It's a style that is
it's a style,
very popular.
but I still want to hold on to, I think that Tom was also shy.
Yeah, definitely.
You know,
shy,
and I don't think
he wasn't comfortable on
his
stage.
social skills, his business skills, his entrepreneurial skills were highly intuitively, I mean, really, he had just a knack for it, you know. But his social skills, he was awkward. He wasn't Jewish. Let's just start there. You know, you got to. The Yippie culture is pretty much dominated with Jewish humor. You know, Krasner, Hoffman, Rubin.
Miami, 1972. Did you go to the convention?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Because I was actually credentialed as a press person inside the convention with the Unicorn News, which was an alternative news service that we had started, a radical news service. But I remember, the most vivid outside thing I remember was one of the most upsetting things that I can remember from that time, was going to Flamingo Park and watching Dana Beal giving everyone LSD that was there, and then doing classic brainwashing technique. This was the Yippies, you know, because they've been rejected by the Yippies. They were now the Yippies. Right. And, you know...
the Yippies were going to work with the anti-war Democrats.
Yes.
The Yippies wanted to blow everything up.
Yeah. So...
But it was the Waterloo of the movement, because in 78, the police rioted. Yeah. In 72, the hippies rioted. Yeah. And
well, I'm telling you, I was at Flamingo Park watching this. I've never heard anyone talk about this the way I'm going to talk to you. Maybe someone else has. I hope someone else had the same feelings I had. I saw a classic brainwashing technique going on over a course of 6 to 8 hours, with people that had all been given very high doses of LSD. And that, to me, is the exact opposite of what LSD was supposed to do.
And what was the purpose of the brainwashing? What was the
I think it was basically to get them to do what Dana and whoever else was with Dana, to follow them as their leaders.
Just to be anointed as the Pied Piper.
Yeah.